Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. So, as mentioned, what I really wanted to do today, as you can see from the title, is to share my experience of my book transformation from print to digital and interactive. And I put my contact information at the bottom with my Gmail address there, paulkriegerstudio@gmail.com. And I'll also have that at the very end. And so I'd ask you to save your questions till the very end. I've gone through this. It's about 45 minutes. And then at the end, there'll be time for a Q&A that's scheduled. So that's how we'll work things today. So I thought it would be really helpful for everyone here if you knew a little bit about my background in terms of the timeline for my 4 books. So I have a 4-book series, as was mentioned by Kylie, called the Visual Analogy Guides. And for me, it all started, shockingly, 20 years ago in 2004. And I actually worked with a small publisher called Morton Publishing out of Denver. And I had a wonderful experience working with them. But I was really fortunate. Before I signed my first contract, I was advised to come to TAA, and I joined right prior to negotiating my first contract. So in 2004, I was totally green about authoring, about the publishing industry, didn't know anything. And I'm very grateful to TAA for helping me and nurturing me along the way. And that's one of the reasons I'm stepping into a leadership position today, is to give back to an organization that gave me so much. So thank you, TAA, for helping me land my first contract. So in 2004, I landed my first contract, and that was for an anatomy book, Visual Analogy Guide to Human Anatomy. And then 3 years later, in 2007, I got my second book published with Morton, and that was a Visual Analogy Guide to Human Physiology. And then book number 3 came along 1 year later in 2008, and that was a combined book, anatomy and physiology book. That was my third book. It was a combination of those 2 books in addition to having some of its own unique features. Then, 3 years later, 2011, I experimented to try and get into a new market, and that was when my chemistry book was published. And so that was 2011. At this point, I'm happy to report things were rolling along really well. I was going into later editions for all of my books, and I was very, very pleased with the whole process. Time is rolling along, and then we had a big sea change. In 2021, so 3 years ago, Morton was acquired by Top Hat, which is an ed tech company based in Toronto. And that's when the big sea change for me came, because the message that I was being given was, okay, your book is now going to be transformed into a totally digital and interactive book. And print's eventually going to go away, and we're going to help you with that transformation. And so that was 2021. Now we come to 2024, and my books have all gone digital and interactive. They're all on the Top Hat platform. So I'm here to talk about that process, and hopefully by sharing my experience, I can help out many of you who might be going through a similar thing in the future. So my digital and interactive books on Top Hat look like this. So this is actually my anatomy book that is now in its 6th edition. So you can see they're called the Visual Analogy Guides, and that's in its 6th edition. And my artwork's on the cover and a photo. I worked and developed in the book cover design. And so you can see why they're called Visual Analogy Guides, because this giraffe head that you can see is actually being compared to a thoracic vertebra, and there's a photo of one there. So that's why we're calling them that. And then for my Human Anatomy and Physiology book, that book is currently in its 5th edition, and you can see that we have a picture of a bat there, which is being compared to a bone that's embedded in your skull called the sphenoid bone, and then there's a photo of a model of that bone right there. Then we look at the physiology book. That's currently in its 4th edition. This is what it looks like on the Top Hat platform. And here we're taking actually a physiology concept called the membrane potential, and we're comparing it to a battery with polar ends of plus and minus. So those are my books. They're currently on the Top Hat platform, and so I just thought I'd show you those covers. So what about pricing? As authors, we all know that pricing is out of our control. I was always very proud of the fact that Morton kept the prices very reasonable for my books, and the costs were always very low. And so I'm also delighted to see that Top Hat continued with that same tradition. So they have two different models here for pricing. One of them is all of the auto-graded assessments that are included is the full price. And then for $10 less, you can have just the book without the auto-graded assessments. So you can see the price points are very reasonable, roughly $50 and $40 for the physiology book and anatomy book. And then for the anatomy and physiology book, the price points are $75 and $65. So having my books affordable to students has always been important to me, and I'm really glad to see that that's continued here. So I thought I'd talk about the division of labor for digitizing my books. So when I started working on the books with Top Hat, I was assigned a book team just like I was when I first started working with Morton many, many years ago. So in the event that you go through a similar process, or maybe your publisher is acquired by someone, you might have to go through something similar. So it's good to know what happened. So I was assigned a book team, and in my book team, I had an educational project manager who directed everything. I had a developmental editor. I had a production project manager, a copy editor, and a tech check person. So those are the people on my team. Top Hat is all Google-based, and so we used a spreadsheet in Google to assign specific tasks to each person. So we each had our workflow, in one central repository, one location, and everybody had a little checklist and deadlines for everything, and we kept each other accountable as we went through that. Now, I thought it would be important to just list my major tasks. So I know the first thought might be, hey, this book's in a 6th edition, 5th edition, 4th edition. What do you need to do? Well, what work do you have to do? A lot more than you might think. For example, first thing I had to do was make sure that I had learning objectives for all my modules. As you'll see in a moment, I have a modular-based format to my book, and I'll explain that more later. I also had the process of selecting external videos. When I say external videos, those are primarily YouTube videos that I was selecting from. And then I also had to create author videos. So I'll talk more about that later. They came in 2 different types. Again, I'll talk more about it later, so I had to do those. That was time consuming. The fun part for me was this whole new world of interactive tools that I never had at my disposal before. Customizing biodigital 3D models was like a kid going to a candy shop for me. I was just, because I actually am both the author and the illustrator, so I work in both those worlds, and I'm kind of an odd duck in the sense that, for example, when I create a module, it's always usually the illustrator that starts first. I let the illustration dictate what the text is going to be, probably just the opposite of what many of the author word people are in the room. So I got to work in this biodigital. I'll show you a video of that and give you a taste for what that was like. That was amazing. I also was responsible for writing biodigital alt text. I also needed to select Shutterstock images, and I'll give examples of those, and videos as needed. I also had to write assessment questions. So no, I didn't have AI do it. I did it myself, and that was very time consuming. And then I had the process of selecting and customizing illustrations for a downloadable coloring book. I'll explain more about this later too, because this coloring book component was actually a big part of my book. It always has been, and I'll explain how that went. So one question I'm anticipating was, how long did it take you to do all this? So I'm trying to anticipate as many questions as I can. So for the anatomy and physiology book, that's affectionately called the VAG AP Visual Analogy Guide to Anatomy and Physiology. That's referred to as my big book. That's over 600 pages. It took 1 year to complete. So I started it in January 2023, and I completed it in January 2024. Now, it was originally scheduled to go much shorter than that, about maybe 8 months, but there were little issues that came up along the way, and so we finally got everything completed by January 2024, and then it was up on the platform. So this was the difficult part. The difficult part was getting the big book up. The anatomy book and physiology book, referred to as VAG-A and VAG-P respectively, were both worked on simultaneously, and those were really extracted from the big book for the most part. Since the big book was already on the platform, this part was easy. It took less than 2 months to complete because all the hard work was already done. So, in summary, just to give you a time frame, the VAG-A, the VAG-P, and the VAG-AP have all been live on the Top Hat platform since March of 2024. So it's been a little while now. You know, we've been going for a few months. And so that's kind of where we're at in terms of timeline. So just so you understand, I think it's important to understand this, to understand the transformation that I had to go through. So my original book concept, my goal was never to write a textbook. I wanted to write a standalone supplement. And I wanted to teach students how to better learn anatomy and physiology. I didn't want an encyclopedic tome of information. I didn't want to go over every little detail. I really took a less is more approach, and I really wanted a core concept book. So what I wanted to do is use these visual analogies that you're seeing here really as a theme, but not the only part of the book. That was just a thematic key element of the book. I wanted to have a core concept that would cover all the key content that I knew students needed to know after having been an instructor for so many years. And I also wanted to fill it with my own study tips, mnemonics, and even humor. And I was really pleased that Morton gave me the ability to do that. So they didn't make me hold to this strict convention. They let me apply humor and do other things. I wanted to be a supplement that encourages active learning where students would do note-taking. So I had to think about things like white space and issues like that. This is the part that was important. I wanted a coloring book that had coloring pages with anatomically correct detail illustrations. In looking at a lot of the coloring books on the market, and that happened as early as the 1970s, and then there was an explosion of coloring books all over the place. I noticed that a lot of them became a little bit too cartoonish, and I didn't want that. If I'm going to do the illustrations, I wanted it to be more anatomically correct. So, this is a 2-page spread from my book. This gives you an idea of the modular format. So, if you look at the top, this was taken from the respiratory system, and it gives you a title on this 2-page spread. So this one's referring to the tracheobronchial tree. So I want students to focus on one key thing, one core concept, 2-page spread. Simple, clear, clean. All the text, as you can see, is on the left-hand side of the page. And so I have some introductory text, and then I put most of the key structures I want them to know into 2 tables. Why didn't I put it all in one table? There's an anatomical reason for it. In the first table, we have structures that are more macroscopic here that contain cartilage. Those are all anatomically related, so we grouped them together. We have a second table here that's covering microscopic portions of the tracheobronchial tree that don't contain cartilage, and I wanted that distinction to be made. So, if you look over here, so all the key text is over here on the left page. You go over to the right page, and I intentionally want a large illustration. Large, so it's suitable for coloring, right? So I have a large anatomically correct illustration over here, and I handle the graphic layout and design. I did my illustrations in Adobe Illustrator. And it's going from macroscopic to microscopic, and it's going in a diagonal orientation, as you can see here. And notice that there's a little coloring icon. And that coloring icon is telling people to color the structures of the tracheobronchial tree different colors. So they have instructions with a coloring icon. They also have a little flow chart here. So now they're gonna write out the terms, so they have an exercise to manually write it out in their own handwriting. That's good teaching and learning, good active learning practice. If you look at the illustration, it has numbers on it. The answer key for this illustration is at the bottom of the text page. So they don't have to flip to the back of the book to look in the answer key. It's all self-contained in the module. So a student will look at number 1, they can see what it is here. Oh, let me practice writing out that term. Let me write them in order from macroscopic to microscopic. So there's a lot of thoughtful elements in the graphic layout and design of the module. Keep that in mind when I talk about the transformation process, because all that goes bye-bye when I go into the digital world. That really was kind of frightening to me when I first considered it, given all the thought that went into this, but it actually turned out to be fine. It's just transforming it in a new way. So as we all know, we're gonna talk about digital transformation process. We know that it's all on screens today. Whether it be your laptop screen, whether it be your tablet screen, or whether it be your cell phone, students are consuming information on screens. So I had to rethink things, and so what was the process I had to rethink? First thing is what? Scrolling, not page flipping. As I said, that was really shocking for me. I was thinking, that was really rocking my world as an illustrator. I was like, I don't know, can we do this? Is it gonna work? How's it gonna work? I was pretty worried about it. But it's just something you have to adapt to, like any new thing. You just have to think it through and make it work the best that you can. I already mentioned I had 3D anatomical models. That was dazzling. It was so fun. I'll show you a video of it later. It's really great. Now I have a whole new world of tools opened up to me. I can embed photomicrographs in my illustrations and make it an interactive thing for students. I could never do that before in a print book. Coloring pages, this was the big hang up for my book. There was actually a delay in getting it on the platform, and the delay was, how are we gonna handle this coloring book stuff that has been an integral part of your book? Top Hat and I went back and forth on it together, and we decided to get the best of both worlds. We're gonna do it both physically and digitally. So at the end of every one of my chapters, I have coloring pages, and they're PDF files. Students can print them out, color just like they would, with the same size, nice big illustration that they did in my imprint book. Problem solved. What if they don't like doing that? What if they want to go all digital, 100%? They can do it. How do you go all digitally? You upload that PDF into a drawing app, which there are many different ones of, inexpensively today, and they can use their Apple Pencil or tablet device and color it in that way. So if they want to go all digital, they can. If they want to do it physically, they can. So you got the best of both worlds. Really, really nice. I was super pleased with that. Author videos, again, I'll give more detail later, but that was another whole new digital tool that I could go into that was just wonderful. Auto-graded assessments, I'll give an example of that later. I tended to put these at the end of the chapter, and you'll see examples of those. Interactive self-quizzes for mastering anatomical terms. Remember that 2-page spread that I showed you with the answer key at the bottom of the page? That's going bye-bye. So how are we gonna fix that? I'll show you in a minute. Rollover glossary. Instead of having to go to the back of the book to look up your term and the definition and the pronunciation, we now have a rollover glossary that does that for them. Audio pronunciations. One of the biggest fears that students have in learning anatomy is all the cumbersome jargon with the terminology. What if they don't know how to pronounce a term? Yeah, it might be in the glossary or rollover glossary, but now we also have audio pronunciations, even better. YouTube videos. I was able to go through and select ones that were obviously available for commercial use, so you're not violating copyright or anything. And we had a tech check team that made sure that those were available for use. Shutterstock images and videos, for you, if you're already a textbook author and you're dealing with full color images, you might just be like, oh, what's a big deal? For me, it's a big deal. I was a 2-color book, and now I'm going to full color. It's a huge step forward. Okay, so now I'm gonna give you an idea of what my book looks like. And if you were to go onto the Top Hat platform right now and look at the table of contents, TOC, you'd see something that looks like this. So what you would see is a list of chapters numbered like this, and then I just put a red box around one chapter at random, so I picked chapter 7, skeletal system. If you click on chapter 7, the skeletal system, and you look at that, this is what you would see. So now, remember I had a modular format to my book, right? So chapter 7 is divided into 7A, 7B, 7C, etc. Those are all modules. So 7A would be a 2-page spread module. 7B would be a 2-page spread module. Now, it's not a 2-page spread anymore. You're gonna scroll down it, but that's how the modules are defined in the new system. Scrolling. You're looking at a scrolling through my chapter. That's very different than what we had before, right? Think of that 2-page spread. That's gone. What do you have now? This. I have full color photos. I got self-quizzing going on. I got a 3D model that has 4 different slides of the heart in it that students can go through, have their own slideshow on it, look at it, rotate that model, move it around, and then at the end, they have some auto-graded quizzes. It looks really different, but it works. You know, we don't have to be scared of different. It's different, but it works, and it works really well. Okay, so there's the first thing. Remember those 3D models I mentioned? Here's an example of a 3D model. So this is from a company called Biodigital. They're based in New York. Students can rotate the model. This is showing the mechanics of respiration or breathing. They can zoom in, they can zoom out, and rotate it in any direction. This is all embedded right within the module. They don't have to log into another platform. It's all right there. The videos are there. The rollover glossary is there. They log onto the platform, boom, it's all there in one place. That's really nice. So here's another example of a model, a 3D model, also from Biodigital. So students can grab this and move it in any direction. This is looking at skeletal muscle, the organization of it as a series of tubes from macroscopic to microscopic. That's looking at an individual cell. They have a little text summary. Now they can go subcellular and look at that cable that's called a myofibril and then explore that. So again, these are all embedded within the module. Pretty nice. That's the kind of book I wish I would have had when I was a student. For me, as a visual learner, this is just like died and gone to heaven. What was the work that I had to do for customizing those? So when you go into Biodigital, here's the way it works. You can go in there, you log in, you get an account, and they have a lot of models that are already preset that they've made. They have their own text and everything else, but you can customize anything and everything. And it really is only limited by your imagination. And here's where I was like the kid in the candy shop. I'm like, oh my God, I can make anything I want. So I went in here and I'm like, oh great. So here's what I did. So a common question will be, well, what did you do when you went into Biodigital? What work did you have to do? So here's what customizing means. The first thing was, I actually talked with my book team about what do we want our background color to be? Is it gonna be black or white? We decided on a sky blue. So we collectively worked together as a team, decided on this. That's the default color for all the models in Biodigital for the entire book. Creating text descriptions. See the text right over here that you see? I actually deleted what they had in there. I created my own text because I wanted it to flow with my module the way I would say. I want to make it real clean and simple. And then what you can do is create your own list of anatomical structures. So you see this bone called the hyoid bone listed here. You can add or delete as many labels as you want. Totally up to you. You can create your own slideshow or tour. So just like a PowerPoint slideshow that you're looking at now, if you look up here, it says this is one of 7. So I have 7 slides in this tour. It's a slideshow, its own individual slideshow. Students click through the slideshow. It's great. Now, look at the skull that you're seeing right here. It has a natural bone color, right? I don't gotta leave it a natural bone color. I can add a color to any of these bones that I want. If I want to color code these bones, yellow, blue, green, whatever color in the rainbow, I can do it. If I want to make one of those bones transparent so you can see inside the skull, I can do it and have done it in many of my models. I can also add 2D images to a model. Why would I want to do that? Well, think of making a PowerPoint slide. Maybe I want to show a photomicrograph of what bone looks like. I could embed that in here too. I can also create quizzes, and if you look over here, it says take quiz. So some of your tours may have a quiz, some of them may not. These are all the options you have if you're gonna customize models in biodigital. So, amazing. That was one of the most fun things that I did. What about embedding photomicrographs? Take a look at this. Here's an illustration. Look at that. See that little photo icon? Boom, photomicrograph pops up. Boom, photomicrograph pops up. Students are no longer looking at a static illustration like a static PDF ebook. They're interacting with your illustration, and they're quizzing themselves on this. Oh, there's a sebaceous gland. Oh, look at this, I can see my hair bulb. And that's what it looks like under the microscope. And I can go back and forth and turn it on, turn it off as much as I want. So adding another layer of interactivity is just like, to me, another way of doing active learning. It's great. What about those coloring pages I mentioned? This is really important to me because here's my visual analogy. And students actually encouraged me to write my first book, and it was all about teaching with visual analogies, right? So what's the power of this? The power of this is I learned real quickly that not all my students are visual learners like me. I took it for granted because I love art and, I'm a visual learner, but they aren't. How do you help those students who aren't visual learners? Well, what you do is, let me back it up. See the color code? It's contextualized learning. You take something from everyday life that they know, which is this giraffe head, and you superimpose it on what they don't know, the thoracic vertebrae. So in color coding, you can say, see the yellow snout of the giraffe? Oh, that's this, the spinous process. Oh, you see those green ears? Well, that's the same as this. Those are the transverse processes. Oh, you see these blue horns coming out? Oh, those things are called the superior articulating processes. They're learning anatomy in a contextualized way, and they're learning to see and learn better. That's the big benefit of contextualized learning. And I used to teach like this in the lab. I drew sketches, and students actually told me, why don't you write a book? And at first I said, nah. And then I took it more seriously, and that was the birth of this. And it's powerful. And you can't have visual analogies for every little thing, but you can have it for a surprising amount of things, and it definitely helps those students who are not visual. Okay, what about author videos? They came in 2 flavors. One of them was narrated PowerPoints. So what I inserted into my book I thought, well, I'm just going to do the audio for some PowerPoints, similar to what I would do in teaching in the lab. So it's really just almost like a virtual version of me teaching in the lab, which is a lot better than just reading static text. So I did that, and I selectively did it in places where I had analogies and places that I thought students needed the most help with difficult topics. So I did that. I also did videos of me teaching in the lab. So this was really kind of interesting how this evolved. So what happened was, many, many years ago, this is probably around 2010, what I did was, I had a video of me teaching in the lab that was really popular on my college's YouTube channel, and it was called 10 Tips for Studying the Skeletal System. And it got a lot of views, and it was very popular. And so the problem with it was, way back in 2010, that was a 49-minute video. Well, nobody's looking at 49-minute videos anymore, unless they're really patient. So I had an idea. I said, okay, in this video, I give a lot of teaching tips, and there's a lot of analogies packed in there. So what I did was, is I said, instead of having one long 49-minute video, why don't we splice this up? And we edited it, that original video, into 16 shorter videos that were 1 to 2 minutes long. And I got permission from my media technologies department in my college, who originally made the video, to do this. This turned out to work really, really well. So now imagine you're going through a particular area of the skeletal system. Boom, in that module, you'll have a 1 to 2 minute video that will pop up. And then I remember when I approached my media technology department, I said, could I get permission to do this? They said, not only will we give you permission, we'll give you a high resolution version of that file. And I'm like, oh, what a nice guy. But I already knew Class was a nice guy, so I wasn't surprised that he did that. But that was wonderful, and they were really cooperative. So that's how that worked out. Auto-graded assessments. So at the end of every module, I was basically assigned to write 3 or 4 simple questions. And those were typically either like a multiple choice question, or a matching, or sorting, or fill in the blank. Those are the ones that I use the most frequently. I did have other options, but those are the ones I use most frequently. So my auto-graded assessments were typically at the end of the chapter. And so the way that it works in Top Hat is a professor can get like a weekly report. So the student goes in and takes the quiz for however modules you assign. And then at the end of the week, you might get a little weekly report, and it would say, oh, okay, well, you have students who did really well on these 2 questions. Well, you have some that were doing quite poorly on these 2. Oh, here's 8 students who are doing exceptionally well in the class, and here's 8 students who are kind of struggling. So this auto-graded feature is really, really nice. I didn't have that in the print version of my book, just another new tool at my arsenal. Okay, remember that little answer key at the bottom of the page when I showed you that 2-page spread and I said it was going bye-bye? Well, it has. So what did we replace it with? We replaced it with this thing called thing links. And thing links basically allow a student to go in, and you can see any place where there's a flashing black circle, they can hover their cursor, and there's the answer. So it's like a variation on a rollover glossary, but it's the answer key to that structure. So again, think of now a student going through an illustration. They're never looking at a static illustration anymore. They're actually interacting with it. They could have a photomicrograph pop up. They could have the answer key pop up. I don't know about you, but if I was starting all over again in undergrad, this is the kind of way I would like to learn, because I'm a very visual learner, as I said. So that was really cool. Here's the rollover glossary I was talking about. Boom. You roll the cursor over and look. Pronunciation, definition, pops right up for all these blue color-coded terms. And as I mentioned over at the side, if I mention over here, note that it says this is in addition to the glossary at the end of the book, not in place of. So if students still want to get an overview of all the different terms that are included in the glossary, they can pop to the back of the book, but they also get this. Very, very handy for students, much less cumbersome than the old way of doing things. Audio pronunciation, listen.
Xiphoid process.
That's the audio pronunciation that I mentioned. So this is built into the biodigital program. It's also built into some of the screen reader functions that I have that I use with this, and so that is really nice too. So YouTube videos. So I was charged with selecting YouTube videos. I generally use these in a couple different ways. One of them was an introduction to the module. So I often would put them at the beginning of a module as an introduction. Sometimes I did the opposite and use them as a summary at the end. So for placement in the module, the video usually went either at the beginning or at the end. The benefit for me was I was gonna handpick these myself. A little tip I would recommend if you ever are charged with a task like this is I was worried about getting dead links, right? So what I tried to do was not only look for ones that were really relevant and well explained, but for ones that had a lot of good subscribers on them that were very popular to help avoid getting dead links. So that's one thing you might want to have to think about if you ever have to go through a process like this yourself. Shutterstock photos and videos. So I already mentioned that. Mine was a 2-color book that I started out with, right? Now it's gone full color. So I have the option of this whole bunch of different photos and videos to look at. And if you look at this, this is an example of some images like this one of the ribs here for the skeletal system, muscular system. Some of these I used as chapter openers. So some of the photos I would use as a chapter opener for my new chapter I'm working on. Some of them, like you saw before, like this is an example of a tissue. Here's an example of a neuron. Those would be examples of photomicrographs that I would use to embed in an illustration, and they popped up that way, so that was really nice. Here's another new thing that opened the door for me. All my illustrations previously were 2-color. I'm not limited to that anymore. That meant that I could go back and take some of my illustrations and I could add color to them in any way that I wanted. The whole color palette was open to me. Let's say I want, and here's what's really cool. In the print version, I would be limited to 2-color, and then students could color in as a coloring activity. Now I can present them with the full color and put the black and white or 2-color version in the coloring book at the end of the chapter. That's powerful. Now they got both. Never had that before. Really cool feature. Accessibility and inclusion is built in throughout the TAA platform. It was one of our goals that we were going to strictly abide by when we built the text. And for national titles like mine, you follow all of these rules. So I already mentioned that I was tasked with doing alt text on images for visually impaired students. I was also, it's kind of cool to know that they have flexible scheduling for homework for students with learning disabilities. So if you assigned a piece of homework and you maybe needed a student to take more time with it, you could do that. It's built in, so you were allowed to do that. They have headers that follow some strict rules in the TAA platform. That makes it easier for keyboard navigation. Sometimes math in questions is a problem because those symbols aren't read by screen readers for visually impaired students, but they resolve that issue, so it's easier for that to be done. And then I have, obviously, closed captions on all my multimedia, so YouTube videos, author videos, all had closed captions. So this is another level of accessibility and inclusion that was built into my books that I didn't have completely with the in-print book. TAA uses AI, and they have a program called ACE. And so if you look right over here, let's say that, for example, a student was looking on their mobile device, like on their cell phone. ACE might ask them the question, do you have a question about the material on this page? I'm here to help. So it's a virtual assistant. So I said, it's like Apple's Siri for textbook readers, right? But it's not like Siri in the sense that it doesn't explore the whole internet. It only cross-references material in my book. So if I have a particular way of wording something, it's going to keep that intact for the students so they don't get lost in lots of jargon. So I don't know about you, but to me, that's an appropriate way to use it. Take a look at the video. I'm Paul Krieger, the author of A Visual Analogy Guide to Human Anatomy and Physiology. My original book concept was to use visual analogies as a theme to help students better learn anatomy and physiology. Using these analogies, students take familiar objects from everyday life and apply them to unfamiliar anatomical structures and physiology concepts. My book has been transformed into a digital and interactive book on the Top Hat platform and includes enhancements and features that weren't previously available. One example is 3D models that can be manipulated through rotation and zoom features, allowing for detailed views of different structures. Other features include added interactivity with my illustrations where icons can be clicked on to reveal photomicrographs. Printable coloring pages allow for coloring both physically and digitally. Author videos such as this narrated PowerPoint and other videos of me teaching with analogies in the lab. Interactive quizzes such as multiple choice, sorting, and matching questions. Interactive self-quizzes for mastering labeled structures on illustrations. An embedded glossary with a pronunciation and a definition, as well as audio pronunciations that are beneficial for learning difficult terms.
Xiphoid process.
Students waste a lot of time trying to find good YouTube videos. I already selected very good ones for them to use. My book can be found at tophat.com. Click on Catalog, then Anatomy and Physiology, then scroll down to find my book. So why did I show you that? That's a video I did on my YouTube channel, and I did it for the express purpose of marketing. So we heard Jamie talk about marketing not long ago, and John Bond and others have given nice presentations about why it's important to help your publisher with marketing. So that kind of did a quick synopsis of a lot of the key things that I already mentioned, but that's a helpful tool for the marketing team if they want to do a mass email, for example, and send out that hyperlink. They can just go right to my channel. So that was really nice. Okay. So here's some food for thought. So I was recently told by someone on Top Hat that about 80% of Top Hat users prefer using their cell phones for accessing learning materials. Now, my eyes are getting old, and that is not the way I would prefer to do it, but think about that, right? They're very comfortable with this format. They're very comfortable doing stuff, not even necessarily defaulting to a larger laptop screen or tablet screen, but to a simple cell phone screen. So Top Hat works in all those arenas, so that makes it really, really handy for students who want to work that way. So my closing message is basically this. It says, the future of textbooks and learning materials is digital and interactive. And after looking at this, I actually feel like saying, it's not the future, it's now. For me, it's now. I'm saying the future, though, because as we're finding out with my books on the platform, a lot of people aren't ready to go all digital. And one thing that I appreciate about Top Hat is that it's giving customers a choice. And a lot of times they're doing hybrid. So my book, the print versions of my book are still being sold, but then the digital and interactive, everything I just showed you is there and available and ready to use if they make that choice. But all colleges and universities are different, so this really gives them nice choice. So with that, I'll take any questions that you have, and there's my contact information at the bottom if you have any questions. Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. I have a question about customizing the images that you got from Biodigital.
Biodigital, yeah.
Right. So you talked about changing colors and maybe changing callouts. Are there things more substantive in the artwork that you could change? Say, if there's a ligament missing from the picture that you really need to show?
They do have like paint tools in it. They have paint tools where you can add some of your own things, but they're kind of assuming when they made the program. Most people aren't artists, and this is why we did it. And so they have pretty much everything available there. But again, if you aren't an artist, you could also import an image, and it could be your own image that you make, and include that or superimpose it on something.
So when you buy this license with BioDigital, they allow you to alter?
Yeah, the way that it works anybody can go and sign up for an account.
Yeah.
And a lot of things are free. But then I think they have different levels, don't they, Lisa? Lisa Peterson's at Top Hat, so that's why I'm looking over at her. So Top Hat basically has a licensing agreement with BioDigital.
Yep, sure, sorry. Yes, Lisa Peterson, I'm up after, so I can also talk about some of that if you want. But yes, we have an enterprise agreement with BioDigital, so any of our national authors, such as Paul, can go in and do really whatever he wants with the content. And I believe we are certainly, any custom author can also use it and embed BioDigitals into the platform. And I think you used to have your own account, which is a very minimal fee. And so, yeah. No problem. No problem.
Other questions? One over here.
It was it was very visually pleasing what you showed. Going into the digital form, how much of a learning curve was it to get adapted, or how much help did you receive from Top Hat in making it digital?
Well, as I mentioned, I had a book team with me.
Okay.
And so...
you might have answered, but I don't think I
Oh,
got
okay,
it.
it's fine. Well, it is good to know. I didn't talk about this, and it is good to know. One thing that I didn't mention is there a big learning curve in learning the Top Hat platform? Because when you go into their platform, you do have to learn how to use it. But actually, the training I had on that was very minimal, because if you used any word processor or anything, all the tools are very similar to what you'd have in like a Google Docs or like an MS Word or things like that. So it's pretty easy to use the platform. So I had minimal training in how to use the platform. And then I was really teaching myself a lot of the BioDigital and things like that. And they have a lot of how-to videos, both within the platform and on YouTube about that. So I did some of that myself. But there really wasn't a big learning curve in terms of what I needed to learn to do all this digital stuff, because a lot of it's already in place, and I'm either modifying things or editing them. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know how much time you spent out of creating new content, just learning how to do things.
To be very honest, so I told you it took a year to do the big book, the first one. Okay. It took about 12 months. And at the very beginning, I was working full-time on it. Full-time being probably like 50 hours a week. But that's when I'm steep in the learning curve and everything like that. But that gradually went down a lot as I went through the first couple months. Our team had to get up and running, and there were little glitches and things like that were worked out. But once the team came together, I was probably doing averaging maybe, 30 hours a week or so. It was busy, but yeah. It's a complicated project because there's a lot of bells and whistles with my book. A lot more complicated than maybe some books in the humanities or things like that might be. But that's just kind of the nature of the beast, so yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Paul, you talked about curating, ancillary YouTube videos. So my question is, what if tomorrow someone publishes the be-all and end-all of endocrine system function videos, and you have to have it, right? How plastic is this product in the sense of, I really want to add this or change out this asset? And the follow-up to that is that what does a next edition look like?
Okay. Let me do the second question first. Okay. So, when you go into the digital world, as I'm sure many of you heard, the term that they use now is evergreen. So there really isn't a new edition because you're working on it all the time. So for example, the minute I got this done in June, I already started looking at new photomicrographs and stuff I want to incorporate. And then Top Hat will set a due date, like maybe at the end of June, we're gonna do that. And that's gonna be called, they'll just call it an update probably. Would that be the correct term? Yeah, an update, not a new edition, but an update. And I'm really kind of determining that. They're giving me the freedom to determine how much or how little I want to do. And in terms of the first part, like if there's a YouTube video or something that's commercially available, I can dump the old one and put it in the next update. So that's not a problem.
So the user just uses the old one, or does the update go to the user who's already, sorry. How does this interact with the user? Just,
I'm not sure if I understand it.
thank you, sorry.
Yeah, so Paul, as the textbook author, he can do currency updates as he pleases. So again, if those new videos are something that he wants to add to his book as an update for next summer, that's fine. But then any user who adopts his textbook has the ability to fully customize the book as they wish. So if they have a suite of videos that they want to replace, they can do that. So they can add different photos if they want. So that's, to be honest, a difficult thing for a lot of authors to hear, and I think that's a challenge that we have had to discuss with authors, that your book is customizable by the adopter, but does that help?
We have a question over here. I just want to let folks know we have about 4 minutes, so maybe
4
1
minutes?
to 2 more questions.
Okay.
My question is, if you're constantly updating it, how is the author receiving royalties if he's updating it? It's not a new version, it's an enhancement, whatever. I mean, when we redo a book, we're selling new books, but if you're constantly updating it, how is the author compensated?
I can answer that. So no different than before. I still receive royalties. It's just the terminologies change. So an update is equivalent to a new edition. So the edition concept has gone away, but just like in a new edition, I'm constantly making updates and changes. So how do they do it? They track it. Every time I log in and make a change, they know that I've done that. That's proof that I'm working on a new edition or working on a new update, however you'd like to do it. And I receive my royalty payments the same way I did from the previous publisher, Morton.
And I'm getting an update. If I've already purchased the copy, the digital copy, and you're updating that, that's what I don't understand. If I've already paid for it once, do I have to pay for an update?
Oh, yeah, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah. Let me answer that. Yes, I'm sorry. Paul. I hope you don't mind my... Yeah, we have a process called in-app updates. So anytime through these evergreen editions or updates, so Paul has made some updates to the book, those get pushed to our marketplace, so every adopter who has purchased the textbook can either accept or reject those. So it's up to you entirely. If you like the book the way it is, you don't have to accept those updates, but you can accept them, no change to the pricing.
By adopter, you're talking about an institution, not a student. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
So if I understand correctly, the question we have is for the student who took the class in 2024.
Oh, yeah.
And now in 2026, there are a lot of different things. The student is stuck with.
Just like any
perhaps it's just like with any book.
With any print book, they will
get the
get
edition that you
perpetual
get.
lifetime access to the book that they used in the classroom,
Okay.
but they have lifetime access in their book gallery.
That's important to know because I didn't mention.
So a student could get the access to the updates.
No, they will not get access.
Okay,
They
that's
will
what I
only
wanted to
only get
clarify.
access to the version that they purchased
Right.
that was used by their professor.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.